hyped because of how shit the Broncos are. Not that we're doing much better, but I still like us over the Broncos. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Cast. As you guys know, I am your host, Cassidy Streeter, and today we are out of week 5, looking forward to week 6. Despite my Packers not playing, but I think that they really need a mental reset. I think the team needs a mental reset after the last 2 games. But besides that, we are not going to talk about that too much. We are obviously going to be looking back to last week, a few reactions that I have to noteworthy games, and then we're going to look forward to Thursday night football. First game I want to talk about a little bit, which I didn't even end up watching the whole thing, is Bears Commanders. Everybody bet against the Bears. I think there was only one person who predicted they would win this game, and given the history of this team over the course of this year, I think that people, if you had told me that, they were going to adjust the offense more to Fields' strengths, I think that you could have still, said Commanders, because overall, the Commanders' defense is, a lot better. And I think that offensively, I wouldn't say that, each team has a really good wide receiver. I think that Scary Terry's a real deal. I think that DJ Moore is also the real deal. And I think that you just can't really, discredit those two guys when arguably they are now entering a time in their career where they have a quarterback that is better than any previous ones that they have had. I'd even say that about DJ Moore. I think that, the fact that they've had a shuffling court. I mean, Washington, I think, had the most QBs shuffling or something the last 10 years or something, some crazy high number that they even talked about, but now they've decided that Howell is their guy. And I think that Howell is the real deal as well. Has good composure, a good arm, and, there's a lot to like. Even in the first 5 games of his career. And obviously he beat out, I can't remember who he beat out, to be honest, but he beat out someone in training camp. That just kind of proves who was they brought on to be the starter. But then they were like, no, we're going with Howell. But breaking down the Bears Commanders, I really like that the Bears are finally adjusting back. I mean, I wouldn't even say back, I guess, to the strengths of Justin Fields, but they're giving him a lot more flexibility with what he does. Don't get me wrong, I think he can pass from the pocket. We definitely saw a little bit of that Thursday night, but I think that the Bears, ultimately the strength of this team is the offense, because I think that the defense doesn't really have an elite pass rusher, at least a proven elite pass rusher. They seem to be, I wouldn't say pass rush by committee or anything, but it's pressure comes from different spots depending on, the play and that sort of thing. But then the Commanders, they did get good pressure on Fields. They were making him move. They were actually getting sacks on him. They just really didn't have much production on offense, because I think that the Bears, they brought more pressure than what you would expect from their defense. And if that continues, then that's good for them. But the Bears, I will say this, I don't think that they were as bad as, their record states. I think that the media, possibly over-heightened exactly what was going on with them and how much drama there is. But I think it's a credit to Fields. I think, they were even saying, I can't remember which player they asked, but after every loss, Fields seems to be even more locked in to break their losing streak dating back to last year where they lost a lot of games in a row. But yeah, credit to the Bears. I think they definitely maybe outplayed themselves against a Commanders team that has been scrappy this year against good teams. But then moving on to Sunday, we have Jaguars Bills, and I'm not going to lie to you, the Bills, after coming off a dominating win against the Dolphins the previous week, they ran up against the London Jaguars is what I'm going to dub them as, which I think sounds kind of funny because I think that they actually play better over in London than they do in Jacksonville. I don't know what it is with this team, if they can harness that energy or whether it's the place or whether it's the fact that they just know how to play there better because they used to be like the poster child team to go over to London, and they seem to, I wouldn't even say, I don't know, I guess, how many home games they have to away versus neutral. What's supposed to be neutral, but they obviously have more of a home crowd over there because they've been there a number of times. But the Jaguars limiting the Bills, I think, to 32 yards rushing is huge. I think that even though the Bills aren't a huge rushing team, the fact that they have, Allen who can bust it loose for a lot of yards and be essentially just like a free runner at times, being able to contain him and make sure that like Stephon Diggs doesn't have a big day is huge. And if the Jaguars can harness that, they are now my pick to win the AFC South. And that leads to the next game of the Texans-Falcons. I think that the Falcons kind of eked by here. They got kind of lucky, and the Texans definitely kind of didn't play up to how I thought they would offensively, to be honest with you. But still, the Texans doing really well. I'm trying to remember the receiver that's doing really well. But I think that they just weren't able to put as much points on the board as they needed to. I'm not going to talk about Panthers-Lions. I think this does show, though, that the Lions defense is still a liability. I know it's only 3 touchdowns and a field goal, but, against a Lions team that is considered top 10 in the league, to give up 24 to a Panthers offense that has struggled to find its identity and doesn't really have that much star talent is troubling. Like the Lions, to me, yes, they have a good record. They have, a very good defense. Aiden Hutchinson is the real deal. And the Panthers, they just haven't really done very much offensively, in my opinion. But yeah, the Lions, pummeling the Panthers defensive struggle is still apparent. I don't know what's going on because last year they were definitely doing a lot better. And they're a very young defense, and they seem to have taken a big step back this year. Moving on to Titans-Colts, this kind of goes to show me again that the Titans are not really a team that's going to be very good. The Colts, I wouldn't say super surprising that they're good this year. I think that they are very well coached. I think that they have a very good system. And even the fact that Minshew has been starting, Minshew's looked very, very calm and collected. And that's what a pocket passer needs to be. But the return of Jonathan Taylor, he obviously got limited carries, but they looked very good. Running back, I wouldn't say by committee, but they were shuffling them around a lot. And it's good that they have him back because he is obviously their best offensive player, besides like at a skill position, I'll say, because obviously Quentin Nelson is probably a better left guard than Jonathan Taylor is at the level of his position, and especially not having played or been at training camp. So they're going to have to ease him in before he is who he was. But yeah, the Titans, I don't know what to say. You can't put up points. Your division rival, yes, you're visiting, but The Colts could have a sneaky win possibly to win this division, in my opinion, having the same record as the Jaguars up here. But moving on, I'm trying to think of some other games to play. I'll just say this. I think the Patriots overall, I just think that you can't win with a QB that just doesn't have any, big play ability. And I mean, it's bad for Belichick. Who knows? I mean, this could be that they fire him this year. It's the worst 2-game stretch where they've scored 3 points over the last 2 weeks. And I mean, the thing about it is the Saints do have a stout defense, and the Patriots just don't really have an offense that can go up and contend, to be honest with you. Ravens Steelers, this is probably one of the biggest shockers to me of the week. Ravens losing, and essentially Lamar Jackson, I wouldn't say throwing the game away, but the defense, Joey Porter Jr. making an outstanding grab. It makes me wonder why they weren't starting him at the beginning of the year. But he's allowed, it's a 0 QBR and he hasn't allowed anything. So it's kind of insane, especially considering he was drafted later in the first round. Not to say he's not a good talent, but it's if you can draw parallels to how Sauce played last year, and obviously Sauce didn't have a 0 QBR when he was targeted, even though it was, pretty low, and it was dumb to target Sauce or whatever receiver he was covering last year. But yeah, it's crazy that we've gotten 2 guys that apparently look like insane lockdown corners, that if, Joey Porter has this insane year this year, he could look like, potentially, I wouldn't say the best corner, but top 5, which is crazy. But yeah, the Steelers being able to win this is huge for them. This division is crazy record stacked with the Browns, and then the Browns and the Bengals. The Bengals obviously being later, which, if you had told me through 5 weeks that the Bengals would have been dead last with a bunch of 3-2s, I believe the rest of them are, then I would have called you crazy. But this division, who knows who's going to win it. And then, we have Bengals Cardinals. The Bengals, I remember watching at the beginning, it looked like they were struggling at the beginning, finally able to break out at the end. I think that this, I think the Bengals are starting to, feel the pressure, because if they lose to the Cardinals here, which, essentially a trap game, making you look really bad, and then you drop to 1-4, and then you're a worse record than the Cardinals would have been. That's just insane to me. But yeah, the Cardinals continuing how they're playing scrappy, but then ultimately the Bengals exploiting them at the end of the game. Eagles-Rams was an interesting game for me, that I thought, I was like, this is a chance for the Rams to kind of prove that they can be a team, that can compete, at a high level. I think they did all right. I wouldn't have expected them to be able to win this game, to be honest with you, but I think that they did all right, considering they're up against, one of the 2 undefeated teams going into the week. Moving on, we have Jets Broncos, and this game is the ultimate, potentially revenge game, where, Hackett, obviously the offensive coordinator of the Jets, not the head coach, going up against Sean Payton, who just discredited him heavily in the offseason, saying how it was the worst head coaching job in NFL history and all this. And then and then ultimately Russell Wilson blows the game, because it's like I said, I think that Russ I think he just has such a big ego that it prevents him from playing sound football. And, he overestimates himself or underestimates the other team, whichever it is. It's like, I don't care. But throwing a pick 6 at the end when they should have been able to at least tie it, you know. But yeah, the Broncos, not gonna lie, what a joke. What a joke. For them to lose to the Jets, to drop even further. Obviously, I'm gonna talk about them a bit more going into Thursday night against Kansas City. This is not how you would have wanted your season to start. And it's like, I would have had them pegged to win this game, even though I dislike Russ. I think that the Jets offensively, it's interesting to me because like the Jets, they seemingly keep getting better each week. But yeah, really stupid throw, that he never should have made. Sean Payton, when he goes to the sideline, looks at him like you just, what was this throw? No reward on this. Going on to the next game, we have Chiefs-Vikings in Minnesota. And the Chiefs ultimately just playing systematic football, dominating this team. The Vikings, who were the number 2 seed last year. Justin Jefferson, unfortunately, getting hurt, getting put on IR, so he's going to mix the next 4 games. I think this is the point where the Viking season could potentially be over. Because even if you go like 2-2 in these next 4 games, then you're still gonna be 3-6, and so you're still behind 500 by 2 games, and then it's without Justin Jefferson. I'm sorry, but he is their offense. The fact that they traded, they traded away. Or released Dalvin Cook. I'm sorry. Holy crap, am I mixing up my things? They released Dalvin Cook, getting nothing for him, saying that the running back that they had was going to be fine. And then they go out and they trade for Cam Akers because obviously they're not satisfied with the running back room that they have. And Akers has looked... he's looked, all right. Maybe a change of scenery with him because he did seem to have, I wouldn't say bad blood with the Rams, but they were ultimately just ready to move on. Maybe there was some, things that went on there that made them like, we need to just trade this guy. And, they didn't really get too much for him, but at least they got something, which is tough in the running back market, even for perennial running backs. Like we look at Jonathan Taylor and nobody was going to take him, but maybe it's because the Colts asking price was too high. But yeah, the Vikings losing this game at home, they've already lost, I think, at least 3 at home. So it doesn't look very good for them, going late into the season, and with and that sort of thing. Even though I think their right tackle, Brian O'Neill, has played really well. And now there's talk of Kirk Cousins getting traded. But yeah, Chiefs, Vikings, the Chiefs just handling them, never really giving them a chance to win, even though it was only a 7-point difference. Now, the game of the week that I think was a shocker to most, even though I think that the Niners going into this game, obviously they were the favorites. There's no questioning that it's like, you look at the Cowboys and the Niners just have a more loaded team. The Cowboys, don't get me wrong, they have a good running back, Tony Pollard, but he is no Christian McCaffrey. And then it's like you have CeeDee Lamb, Gallup, and I forget their third wide receiver's name, but it's like the Cowboys. But then you have Brandon Ayuk and Debo that are used very well with Kittle. You just have so many weapons. And I do think that Dak he's just not a good quarterback. I'm just going to come out and say it. My honest opinion on him is that Dak, he can't not throw bad picks. To me, it's like his mental gets destroyed. You can kind of tell that when he makes mistakes in games. And then the other thing is that even if even if McCarthy is calling the plays, it doesn't matter what you call if Dak can't, throw. And if you can't throw, teams are going to square up against the run, and Tony Pollard isn't going to do that much because he's not a power back, and the Niners are going to get constant pressure or whatever. The team that beats the Niners is going to have to be able to at least pound the ball a little bit in order to make them, to keep them honest and stack the box in order to, do anything. But yeah, I'm not going to lie. Like, didn't think the margin would be this big. And then there seems to be like bad blood to the Cowboys and the Niners, but the Niners seem to have a really punkish attitude about it. But, they're like, oh, just wait and see. It's not going to be very good for them if we play them again, which I just don't buy. I do not buy. They have a quarterback that fits their system a lot better. And I mean, not going to lie, I think that Dak, not that his system doesn't fit him, but it's like he's had, more than enough talent on his team to be able to score more than 10, even against a Niner defense. That's just my opinion. But yeah, Purdy looks really solid. And I just don't think that it's like, with Shanahan and the way that they call their offense, it's like, it's hard to prepare for. And it's going to take, you're going to have to not only be opportunistic, but you're going to have to be physical with this Niners team, which they can out physical just about any team, I feel like, in the league. Moving on to Monday night, my Packers against the Raiders. If you watch this, you kind of realize that it's like, 3 interceptions from Love, obviously a career high for him, and it's been a lot of interceptions these last 2 weeks. He had 2 against the Lions and then 3 in this game. I personally don't know what happened, on his first one to a linebacker, that it's like they pointed out that he had a 2-year extension. So it's like essentially I wouldn't say a nobody, but he's obviously more of probably a bridge player, type of thing, where it's like, who is this guy? And the thing that I'll mention is that the Raiders defense, and I joked with my sister, I was like, who their defense is? It's Max Crosby, because Max Crosby is top 5 for pressures and has a good amount of sacks. And I don't necessarily think the Packers handled it poorly how they played him, but I do think that they should have had somebody in, as the emergency blocker at running back. Like, they should have had A.J. Dillon back there to at least chip him or delay him from getting from Love, because sometimes that is all you need. And I don't know what's going on with Love. I think that, Watson coming back is interesting because it looks like he's trying to force it to him too much, which is just not a good thing. Once teams catch on to that, you're just going to throw more and more picks. I think this is going to, don't get me wrong, I think that Love is the future. I think that what we saw in the first 3 games showed that he is a leader and he is resilient. I don't necessarily think the play calling is too bad, but I think that he's got to be a little bit quicker with his decisions. I think that he's got to stop trying to get it downfield so much, because there was definitely some times where I feel like he should have just dumped it to the running back or the flat route or something shorter in the game. But the Raiders, I'll say this, I think that Garoppolo played a lot better. He obviously, he had a pick, Rudy Ford ultimately played it and tracked that wide receiver across the field. The Packers defense got a good amount of pressure on Garoppolo. There were a couple of times that he wanted to go out on the run and couldn't really get anything off of it. I think that there's a good amount of positives even from the Packers in this defeat, that you can't take away. I think that even though Quay Walker went out with an injury, I think that he was playing well at the beginning of the game, and I think that he's played well all season, being the leading tackler. being a strong tackler and that sort of thing. And then I think that you look at the team and they overall didn't give up too much on defense. But I think that what they said on about the offense of the Packers having no identity is really, has really, I guess, hurt them. We ran the ball with AJ Dillon quite a bit. One thing I will mention of who knows, maybe this is why the game plan was just so bad, is that it seemed like they had, somebody had said that they had banked on Aaron Jones playing when obviously he tweaked something, to where he was a complete no-go from having very, very limited snaps against the Lions and was used almost more as a decoy that game with play action, which didn't go well either. But I think that LaFleur needs to realize that he needs to have some sort of a game plan if Jones doesn't play. He needs to maybe try to get these wide receivers out in more open space, get Luke Musgrave, who he apparently got really, really mad at for some reason. I still don't really know what it was for, to be honest with you, enough to pull him and put in, gosh, I can't even remember his name, but like the fourth tight end besides Kraft, DeGuara, and Musgrave, where he had his first NFL catch and he looked good. I mean, he looked good on it, playing really smart and staying in bounds for extra yards after making a guy miss. But the Packers, the defense is playing, pretty well, and people still want Barry fired. I kind of get it, but I think that that's kind of I do kind of get it where it's like he has, the safety 10 yards off the line, and then the guy was ultimately able to power his way through Rudy Ford in order to get the touchdown on that one play. I think it's a little bit of an over-exaggeration, don't get me wrong. And then obviously people want to make fun of Preston Smith on Devontae. I do think that's ridiculous. If you're going to put a linebacker on Devontae, it might as well at least be one of these faster guys, because they obviously have Van Ness and Gary. Not to say that those guys should ever be dropping back into coverage. But yeah, my goodness, I don't know what to say. I think the offense doesn't really, they don't seem to feed off the energy of the defense, to be honest. And you usually see that with teams where it's like, even after Ford got a pick or whatever else, they just seemingly didn't. They just don't look like they play with a lot of energy. I mean, I do think that the O-line is doing pretty well, to be honest with you. I think Jenkins coming back helped a lot with the running game because you didn't have any of these guys getting a free run on AJ Dillon, and he was actually having a pretty good ground game. And I think the defense of the Raiders caught on to that, and I definitely think that they're better against the run than the pass. I think that, even though they have Marcus Peters, who's a, wily vet who's been in the league a while, who's pretty good, I think the rest of their secondary is pretty unproven, to be honest with you, where it's like, how many of these guys have really secured their spot on the roster if they were to get someone better. But kudos to the Raiders. I think that, people don't give the Raiders really any credit when it's like clearly they have some offensive weapons. They've had trouble with their O-line, which always gives makes operating on offense, immensely harder. And they did what they needed to do to win, to keep a lead and stay competitive and keep moving the chains. It's not always pretty, and you don't always score a ton of points, but Jacoby Myers, I'm not gonna lie, I was honestly kind of sick of hearing his name near the end of the game, but he kind of showed that he can be that little spark plug gadget player where you're dipping it down to him low. And I know that Devontae Adams had a quiet night. I really think that he maybe should have had some more catches, but it kind of goes back to how they say that, I guess, Garoppolo doesn't really work outside, which, the offense for them looks very simple: run slant plays and dip and dunk to these smaller wide receivers going over the middle, which Devontae can do. So I don't know why they wouldn't plug him in more when he's so good after the catch and so good with his legs and making guys miss. But yeah, overall, I think just a Packers game that got away from them, where it's like it's been that way for, a few weeks now, where it's like the offense just doesn't seem to have any juice. But that wraps up, I did say I was going to go over select games, but that's my opinion on every single game here. And we are now going to move on to Thursday night football, which is the Denver Broncos visiting Arrowhead in Kansas City. So let me pull this up. Let me pull up the injury report. So Chief hosting the Broncos on Thursday Night Football. I don't think it's any surprise here that the Broncos are listed as 10.5-point underdogs. I think personally it could get a lot worse potentially for them. The Chiefs this could be their offensive coming out game. Because as you guys can see, they are doing really, really bad on defense. And the Chiefs, I guess, crazy. I wouldn't have guessed that they were top 10 in passing for their offense. I do think that they're a passing offense, obviously, but they are also rushing the ball well. And I think that they are finally meshing well, with Isaiah Pacheco running the ball. And then you obviously have had Kelsey back for a few games now, and Mahomes, is, completing it at a good clip at almost 67%. So he's only missing one pass out of every three passes. But, yeah, he's even running the ball well, which is crazy to me. But, the Broncos, to me, have kind of painted a target on their back, before the year. I think that a lot of teams aren't going to take kindly, and you never know how, who has a relationship with who in the league, every single player. But it's almost like the Broncos have had it coming since preseason with all the things that Peyton said, and there was some, there was some things going on, that it's like even the Jets, before the season, like even Saleh had some notion, I can't remember in what interview it was, where it's like, he was like, oh, what do you think of Sean Payton saying this about Hackett and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, Sean Payton, who was a great offensive mind with the Saints and did it with Drew Brees. And I mean, you could, I'm not going to say Russell Wilson is as good as Drew Brees, because he's definitely not. But like, you look at their play style and it's like, I think that, Russell Wilson, being a shorter guy, I think he could be able to, if he was as good as, the money they're paying him, then yeah, he should be doing, maybe near as well and be able to produce like maybe 80% of what Breeze did, and it's not like the Broncos don't have any weapons or anything like that, but yeah, you paint a target on your back when you're saying all this stuff about, and you're just outright trying to degrade another coach, and you don't know how many players might find that offensive, that you're just throwing someone under the bus who has never been on your staff or anything. But yeah, this game I kind of expect, it's a rivalry game. But like, I think that the defense of the Chiefs finally had kind of woke up too against the Vikings. Like the Vikings, yeah, they scored 20, but they in this last week, but the Vikings have been, an all offensive team where it's like, you have Kirk Cousins throwing for however many yards and all of that, but it's, I mean, and you don't know how badly it affected the game that, Jefferson got hurt, but still, your Cousins is getting paid good money as well, and he hasn't ever shown up in big games, really. Looking here, it's crazy to me that their last meeting, on the first of this year, it was this close, but it was probably a meaningless game, and it was more of the Broncos playing for pride, because I know that Kansas City, they had already secured a playoff spot here. But looking at this, 200 yards more from Kansas City, 1,300, almost, 200 more passing. Rushing, Kansas City even has 100 more, same average type of thing. Points scored, you look at this, Kansas City not too far ahead of Denver, but then I think about like week 1. But yeah, looking at this, turnovers, one of these coming last week, the game winner interception for the Jets. But then you look at this, even though like, Russell Wilson is a mobile quarterback, 15 sacks allowed in 5 games, averaging 3 a game. That is not very good. And I think that Chris Jones could easily have his way with a really bad Denver Bronco O-line, where it's like, who do they have? And, then Kansas City committed, converting on, half of their third downs, and, Denver's still having penalty issues, and Kansas City apparently too. But like, you look at this is the major thing here. Kansas City only allowing, we're 5 games in, essentially just above 300 a game. Whereas Denver, obviously we have, the game against, the Dolphins, but yeah, 2,300. Even take that game away, and they're still probably just at about the same margin as Kansas City. But yeah, no, crazy to me how bad Denver's defense is. Their pass defense bad, they're this bad. They're, through 5 games, they're almost giving up 200 a game or whatever else. But yeah, and then this, Kansas City only 80 points allowed through 5 games. You just look at this, and I mean, to me, yeah, you just look at this game, and it's like Denver allowing, a 40%, a 4 out of 10 conversion, whereas, the Chiefs are, 3.5. I mean, if that's a thing, through conversions, which I think is, so much better. The closer I think you are to 50, the worse off you are, and the Chiefs are a good 15% below that. But yeah, the Chiefs, at Arrowhead, it's crazy. The Broncos just lost this last game, and it was at home. It was at home against the Jets. And goodness gracious, it's like, your season's practically already over in a stacked AFC. I mean, you have to win. I mean, even if you win 11 more games, you're sitting at, or 12 more games, sorry, you're sitting at, 13. But, I don't think that the Broncos have a shot in this game. And I don't think this is going to be like last week where we miraculously see Russell Wilson play a lot better when, they were playing up against the Jets defense, don't get me wrong, which is the strength of their team. But the fact that, not Russell Wilson, Zach Wilson was able to, score enough to where they had, 24 and they were winning because of him. What do you think Mahomes is going to do? He's going to carve up Denver. And I'm trying to think of what a point prediction I would have for this game. I don't think that this is it, to be honest with you. I think the Chiefs go 35. I think they go 35 with 5 touchdowns to the Broncos having 17. I don't know how they get 18 here. I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of weird. But yeah, I think 17 to 35, will be my score prediction. But if you guys have any thoughts or opinions on this game, let me know in the comments. And right now, I think if anybody wants to chat about anything or any other games coming up this next week, obviously I'm going to have my stream on Saturday to predict the remainder of the games. I guess I didn't really look at the injury report, but I don't think it matters way too that much. But I guess, yeah, you look at the Broncos, you have DJ Jones, D tackle, out. Frank Clark, who's a big player for them, he is out for this game. That's just huge, just a guy that you can't get pressure on Mahomes with. Baron Browning out. Greg Dulcich, questionable, but yeah, the rest of these guys, I mean, they have Justin Simmons here who's going to play, but it's like, I think that, you look at the way that Mahomes distributes the ball, and I just think that I just don't think it's going to matter, even if you have one of your better defensive players in Simmons. And then, yeah, the rest of this team, you have Kelsey questionable, but this is the same injury he's been battling. Karlaftis questionable, and then Tommy Townsend questionable, which I just don't see happening, to be honest, him not playing. But yeah, the rest of these guys, they have a bunch of dudes listed here. Obviously, Tony, for whatever reason, had toe, but full practice. L'Jarius Sneed, obviously their young corner that's been in the league a few years. Knee injury, but full practice. McDuffie, quad, full practice. A lot of these look like smoke screens, to be honest with you. And I mean, the only one, maybe Nick Bolton, limited practice too, but then full practice on Wednesday. Obviously, them losing him would be, kind of a blow, but it doesn't look to me like there's anything really for Kansas City to worry about in this game. The Broncos are a little bit banged up. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you guys on Saturday if nobody is gonna say anything.